Sometimes, this is going to sound bad, but sometimes I think women's wrestling fans only like women's wrestling because they like the chicks, for the sexuality itself. But then other times I'm like, no, I think they're just giving them a fair chance. And so I'm curious what kind of reactions you get from them. Do you get any reactions from, staunch women's wrestling fans that are saying, you're making a mockery of women's wrestling or something like that? I only ask, again, because they're a different breed than normal independent wrestling fans, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anybody ever did think that I was trying to make a mockery of women's wrestling by my character, I would say to them, besides my character work and what I do as far as the sexuality and the mind games, I'd like to think that I can bring it pretty well in the ring for where I'm at. I always give my very best, no matter the situation or opponent that I'm given. And, I always try to show them that I'm not just a character. I also can, I can wrestle. And, but by no means am I the best in the world, but, for 2 years in, I'm doing as good as I can. And I think that's the difference, because there's a lot of people that do go out there and just solely rely on a crazy character or gimmick to get them over and can't do anything in the ring. I've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen girls that have, been in the business for years based on solely, oh, look at my boobs or look at my character, but I don't know how to do a drop-down leapfrog spot. So, there are those, and I am not those, because my trainer was very, very brutal on me growing up, and he used to tell me, don't go out there trying to be, all flashy and whatnot until you know how to properly, work a headlock or, run this spot. And that's how I was brought up. I was brought up as, you don't do all this flashy stuff until you know your fundamentals and you know how to properly do them. And I think that's a lot of things that not just women, but I think men too, lack in the business. Is a lot of them are put out too young or not taught, or not too young, but too early. And, they're not taught like, hey, these are the fundamentals, and you don't go out there and do this fancy arm drag before you know how to, work a wrist lock for a minute or whatever it may be. And, that might be, and I'm not saying that I'm one of those people that is like, oh, I'm old school. I'm saying that, like, mm-hmm. I've seen people go out and don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to do a simple international spot, but can do some kind of crazy springboard, backflip, arm drag from the top. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were never taught the basics. And I think that's one thing that I can say that, like, was different about my training was taught from the bottom up.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is kind of lacking in the business right now. You always hear, people are worried about flips and all this, but they haven't figured out how to do a wrist lock yet. But, and it's funny, I thought about the hypocrisy of the question I asked you, because if you're a male wrestler, and this is probably true all the time, and you even did anything slightly like what you do, nobody would bat an eye. I mean, do you notice the hypocrisy there? Like, if male wrestlers are doing things that are a little bit edgy, nothing over the line, because you don't do anything that's over the line. It's not the type of thing where I would think WWE's looking at you, they're not going to hire you because of this stuff. It's not anything like that, and I would never think that unless it went crazy, which it never has. But if it was a male wrestler, I don't even think, I would be asking you the questions about it, because it was just, I guess it's a societal thing or a wrestling thing where things have changed in women's wrestling, but in men's wrestling, it's been the norm for so long to do stuff like that.
Maybe. Or, maybe it's because I think if men do a sexualized gimmick, I think it's almost never taken seriously. And it's always going to be okay, this is a comedic, act. Or this is, the douchebag act, or, whatever it is, it's never going to be taken seriously. And I feel like it's really odd, but, like, as crazy as, I can get. I feel like when it comes down to when I meet the fans after the show, I feel like they take me very seriously. I'm not looked at as a comedic, and sometimes I can get a little comedic with it, but for the most part, it's not, like I said, it's not meant to be a oh, let me see what I can do to turn the guys in the crowd on. It's not, what can I do to just go out there and be crazy and over the top. It's more of the mind game, and I kind of just go out there and I feel it, and it just blossoms from there.
So most people in wrestling have that kind of one rival, that they work with so much better than others. And for you, I'm not sure if you have that yet. I was wondering, your thoughts on that. Aria Blake is one that you've worked a lot with, and I was thinking it was maybe her, but you might have some different thoughts on it. Like, a CM Punk was Colt Cabana or Chris Hero. What's Priscilla Kelly's, opposition, or do you even feel like you have one yet?
Oh, no, I definitely have one. It's not Aria Blake. I've had a few matches with Aria, but, not enough to say that she's the Colt to my Punk. But you probably know her. I'm sure, well, obviously you do. I'm sure. Kiera Hogan, I have basically been side by side with since my start, really. Before me and her were both wrestling, we managed, and when we were managers, we would catfight, and we would always have, storylines together, and when we started wrestling, it followed us into wrestling, and we've kind of just been the never-ending feud of, Kiera and Priscilla, so I've had more matches with that girl than I can even count. So literally when we wrestle, it's almost like, I don't even know, it's just one of those things where, like, I could not even have an idea of, what I want to do, and I could just go out there and make something out of nothing with her. So yeah, she's definitely as people say, she's the one I'm married to in the business.
You talked about it. You talked about how you're both valets or managers before actually getting into the ring. Both of you are obviously doing quite well in the business right now, not too long in. But, do you think that's maybe a formula for success? I know it's not going to work for everybody, but at least for you two, it seems to be pretty successful.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because, I would say, me and her, I think, helped each other start. Because, for the first year that me and her were wrestling, we were both, obviously still learning, and we were both obviously still, a little shaky about stuff. So, when we would wrestle, we would grow together. And we still are growing together, I think. And it's like, with every match, we get better and better. And I think it's really cool to go back to our first match together and, just see how much we've grown. And I think, having someone that you wrestle all the time like that you're comfortable with, you can really grow and get comfortable in the ring and get comfortable with what you do that way. And I think that has helped both of us a lot. And I would say that, I think a big part of both of our starts came from being with each other so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense too. And then, the other thing I was wondering about also, I talked to Samantha Heights last week because she had gotten to work with cheerleader Melissa over at Shimmer. And, a couple years in, is there anybody out there right now that's, actively working or anybody you've come across already that you've gotten to wrestle that you're like, I am majorly intimidated either by their status or just by who they are, physicality or otherwise?
I don't think there's anybody that I'm necessarily intimidated by. If there's ever been somebody that's like really good at what they do or really strong or whatever it is, I think I always just look at it as much more of a challenge than intimidation because, regardless of what the match is, if I do have the match with that person, I will always come out learning something. And I think that's been the mindset towards more established or bigger opponents.
So September 15th, Shine 45. I assume you'll be there. They don't have a card announced yet. Obviously, we're 2 months away. But I'm assuming you're going to be there. And if you are, do you have an opponent picked out or one that you'd like to defend the title against?
I don't have an opponent yet, but I will be there. I don't know. It's hard to say because I mean there's so many great so much great talent on Shine, and there's a lot of like newer girls. From when I first came, it was like, you know, the established locker room of girls, and now it's a lot of new girls coming in. So, you know, it's always going to be something unique and different now because of that. So I don't know. It'll be a surprise to me, but as soon as I get the as soon as I find out who I'm working, I will definitely announce it, and hopefully whoever it is, it can be an awesome match, because I mean you're coming off of, I mean it'll be a while from now, but you're coming off of a huge weekend for women's wrestling, so it's got to be, I feel like it's got to be something big to compete with the weekend that Shine just had.
Yeah, those expectations. Talk a little bit about that, you know, because now you have expectations. I'm sure you've always had expectations, no matter what level they were, and they've gone up now, I have to assume. You know, you win 4 matches, you win a title, you're now, you know, a torchbearer, something that you may not have been used to before. So now you come in with expectations. People expect you to, tear it up and be on one of the top matches of the card. Talk a little bit about that. You know, the transition from expecting, you know, your own expectations and now having extra added expectations.
I think I would just treat it like any other time. Like, you know, obviously, like I'm defending a belt now, and you know that's a little bit more pressure, but I think it should be treated no different than any other time, because, you know, why should I work any harder now than I ever have before? And why should I have not been working as hard back, you know, before I had a belt? Does that make sense? Like,
mm-hmm.
I think, you know, it should always be, you know, the very best that you can do, and you should always be putting the very most into every match. And like I said, that's all I've ever wanted to do and tried to do, and that's all I'm going to continue to do. So I think, you know, the most important thing is not to get intimidated by holding a belt and not to get big-headed by holding a belt, but to remain the same, you know, hard-working wrestler that, you know, you were and can be.
Yeah. So at job interviews, they always like to ask the question, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I won't go that far. I won't go 5 years with you. But let's say, you know, by the end of next year, do you have any goals that you're trying to accomplish? I don't know how you have your career laid out in your mind, or if you're just kind of like, you know, you seem like a person that just kind of goes with the flow. So, I mean, what's your thought process with wrestling?
I think I take everything that's handed to me, and you know, it's all that I think a person can do is just take everything that's handed to them and, you know, make the best out of what they're given in any situation. And you know, hopefully in a year, 2 years, I'd like to be going overseas. I'd like to be expanding my horizons as far as, like, you know, companies that I work for and opponents that I work. And, you know, I think that's, you know, this the goal right now is just to get out there more and get to some more countries.
Good goal to have, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to throw some names out at you. If you can give me some thoughts on each person, it'd be really cool, and I'd appreciate it. So, okay, I'm going to throw out the first one to you. Actually, it's a pair of names. So, the Carnies, Nick, Iggy, and Carrie Awful. Talk about them.
Yeah, Carrie and Nick, I think, were a big part of my beginning, so to say. Whenever I was about a year in wrestling, I think, when I started, with them. And they taught me so much. And